Hello, and welcome to the Vicars Watch Dibley,
the podcast where real priests talk about pop culture and what we've learnt about faith, life and the church. We've watched Dibley, now we're watching everything else. I'm Kate.
And I'm Ruthi. Today we do not have Ross with us, but we are talking today about Tempting Fortune, a show on Channel 4, which is all about temptation and can you give in or will you stick out and all these different things. We also talk a little bit about Lent and what it means to be tempted.
Happy hello to you all.
Hello.
We're in our vicarages and you're listening in. We're ready and raring to talk about Tempting Fortune. But first, we have some very brief notices. And first, you will have noticed immediately, we are sans Ross again. There's been a really nasty cold going around, which I was struck down last week, as well as Ross. Ross still isn't better. That's why our episode is a week late. And also life is incredibly busy for all of us.
Yeah, Ross hasn't got a voice, so it kind of doesn't work for podcasting.
Indeed.
Yes.
But we're going to jump right in. This is a shorter episode today, as we said. Unfortunately, it's a time of year where things are just really busy for all of us, but we wanted to get something out for you. So, this week, we've watched Tempting Fortune. Ruthi, tell us about it.
Yeah, so Tempting Fortune is a programme on Channel 4, and the basic premise of it, I hadn't watched it before, it is on its second season, but the basic premise is that there are 12 people who enter the jungle, not as in I'm a celebrity, but just regular people, and they have to trek and hike through the jungle to win part of a prize pot. Now, the prize pot is a collaborative one. So there's a load of money that is shared equally between people at the end if they make it to the end of it. The challenge is that along the way there are lots of different temptations that people can take, but they drain money from the collaborative prize pot. So if someone takes a temptation and you don't, you lose money, as well as the person who spent money. Yeah. So temptations range from like a night in a bed because they're all sleeping on wooden boards and it's not very comfortable. Things like there was a pub in one of the episodes where they could go and have a pint and cheesy chips, causing much controversy as part of it. And like you can skip the hike and stuff like that, but they all cost like extortionate amounts of money. So the cheesy chips, for example, were £600 from the combined prize pot. So that's the basic premise. So you're seeing people as a group tempted by various things and you have to see if they fall into temptation.
Yeah. And there's a vicar on it this season.
There is. Yeah, this year there's a chap called David who is a team vicar, and we've messaged a bit on Instagram just saying hello and we're going to talk about what you're doing. We were going to get him on, but he's been advised by his PR company as part of the show that he's got to wait till out of contract, so the end of the series, in order to talk about his experience. Hi, David, but we'll have to see. When we'd watched, so we had watched 2 episodes and he hadn't taken any temptations, but now he has. I've seen the more recent episodes and it is shocking.
Yeah,
shocking.
I've only watched the first 2, but then you've watched the next 2 after that, because it comes out in bursts of 2, doesn't it? Each week.
Oh, does it? Right, okay. I'm partway through episode 4, so I was just finishing episode 4 when we had to meet to record.
I'm pretty sure it comes out in bursts of 2 because
that would make sense.
It aired last Sunday on the 16th.
Anyway,
okay. So there's David, who is a vicar. I think the other really interesting character, brilliant reality TV, love to hate her, is Imani.
Yes.
She sets herself up very early on as saying she's going to take every temptation. And what I found really fascinating about her was, firstly, she's trying to tempt others to give in and enjoy the temptations and kind of live a sort of, well, since there's not going to be any money left at the end, we might as well all enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah.
But also, it's like she seems to be trying, like there's a little bit of narrative when you have her interviews of how she's trying to, I don't know, teach the others a lesson for being too moral or something. So from her perspective, I think we'll talk about the other contestants in a bit, but I think for her it's all about the experience, and she said she's come on this for the experience, and she's in social media, isn't she? She's for her career. Not to place a judge on anyone who's a professional Instagram model or whatever, but there's something about living experiences and enjoying them and experiential wealth for her. And she gets really annoyed at everyone else wanting to try and tough through. But then you have the other people who are generally, they need the money for other reasons. So yes, they're doing the show to test themselves and to see how strong they are, but actually that money could be life-changing money for them.
Exactly.
So Imani immediately starts kind of being portrayed as the serpent in the Garden of Eden, because she is, she is drawing people to the dark side, as it were. And like the cutaways to when she and those she's tempted to join in with the luxuries are with her are really like, the way it's been edited makes them seem really shallow, because like there's I think, was it the first episode where there's a pool and it was like a couple of £1,000 worth to like use a pool each
to swim in a pool,
and she was like, oh, this is so worth it, I really needed it. And I think, and it was like the first day and everyone was aghast that this was but I mean, from her perspective, it's a really beautiful location. I think they're in Thailand, I think.
Malaysia, I think it is.
They're in Malaysia. Beautiful jungle setting. A pool in the middle of a jungle. That is a lifetime's experience. You know, that is. So from an experiential wealth perspective, that is actually a wonderful experience to enjoy, especially if it's a really hot day and you're really tired.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head on the key factor that they should have talked about at the beginning of camp. Those who were there for the money, assumed everyone else was there for the money. Yeah. Whereas there are other people who are there, yes, for the money, that's a factor, a part of it. But for others, it's about the experience and testing themselves and seeing how far they go, but knowing that there will be limits and that they may need to take temptations on the way as part of that. And then the other one is people who are just there for the experience. Yeah, the money's there and that'll be nice at the end. But do you know what? I want to stay in a hotel in the middle of the jungle because I will never get to stay in a hotel in the middle of the jungle. So there's very, very different motivations for people. Yeah,
and I think, again, from the editing standpoint, they really don't emphasise just how horribly hard it is on the hikes. And for those who aren't taking on the temptations.
It's grim, yeah.
I think in episode 2 there's a big blow up because one of the characters, Vicky, gives him temptation to have some chips, because she says she hasn't eaten in days because all they've got to eat is beans and rice. It's not explained to us why she can't have the beans and rice, but there could be
She says it makes her feel sick.
It makes her feel sick.
She can't swallow it.
So she could it could be a sensation thing. It could be, well, no, if there are very valid reasons. There are people who, if the mouthfeel of a food is horrible, they just can't stomach it. Often, if you're on the spectrum, you can have really strong reactions to the physical sensation of certain foods. But also, I mean, if there was a food intolerance, or if I ended up going on this, I know I wouldn't be able to because of my physical limitations. I would be in so much pain.
Yeah. You'd pop a joint out.
I'd pop a joint out.
Hike.
I would be paying to be able to sleep in a good bed. I'd be paying to have a really hot shower because I need a hot shower every morning just for my joints
set
to not
everything
be in
back in
pain.
place. Yeah.
But then also
Yeah.
I wouldn't sign up to do this. What makes it temptation? So there's a difference between temptation and necessity.
Yes, which is what happens kind of early on. So there's certain people who really struggle with the hike. I think it's Vicky and Trish on one of the earlier hikes actually really struggle with it and need to take the taxi to the next location because actually they're not going to make it up the hike.
Yeah.
And yeah, in one of the later episodes, which you haven't seen, here's a bit of future gossip for you. So there's a hotel in the middle of the jungle, and Trish, who is 60, she's a paramedic, she's just amazing, but has really struggled to sleep on the boards because of her hips. And the way that the hotel works, it's £2,000. There's breakfast and bed, there's snacks, there's a hot shower, all of this, £2,000 per bed. So that's £1,000 per person. So if actually there's an odd number of people going in, that's more expensive. So there are 3 people who are tempted to take it. One is Trish, because she's really, really struggling to sleep. She's a really light sleeper as well. One is Martha, because she's had a really hard time and she is desperate for a hot shower and things like that. And the other one is Thomas. Thomas, who's a firefighter, helped a lot in the beginning, but then since then has taken lots of temptations. So the group collectively think that Trish and Martha should share a bed together. But Thomas doesn't. He wants it and is willing to share it with one of them. And Martha's like, Trish, you should go because of that. And she's like, no, it's okay. You go have it to Martha. So Thomas and Martha share the bed. And so there's this whole group dynamic of anger of going, Thomas is taking all the money and doing this, but actually someone else needed that and we should have let them do it instead. Yeah. And it's, going back to Imani, she's the one who's like, you should go and stay in the hotel. You'd love it. It's, it's weird.
What's really interesting is there isn't a discussion about, since we've already paid for the bed and there's space for one person, since we've already paid for 2 beds, that's 4 spots, you've only got 3 people who take in the temptation. Really interesting.
No, so they didn't. So only 2 people did it. So only 1 bed was taken. Sorry, I explained that badly. And so Trish didn't go and stay.
Oh, okay.
So she missed out on a bed where the group felt that Thomas should have slept in the camp with the rest of them and let Martha and Trish have her.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
I should have explained that better. But, yeah. And so Sam, who's a really interesting character, she is just there for the money. And if anyone is tempted by anything, she just calls them weak straight out to their face and then stomps off and does all that. She's clearly there for the money and because it'd be helpful for her and her children. So she is absolutely raging at this. And at the point that I'm on in the episode, she said to the camp, look, if people keep taking temptations, I will drain the pot. And so she's totally switched from not taking anything to, if people don't rein it in, I will drain the pot and take every temptation on the way. Which is interesting.
It's a really interesting psychological shift between... It's that sort of, at this point, I'm not going to get... She's probably got maths in her head of how much she's hoping or how much she needs for financially to be receiving, for it to be worthwhile, not giving in to the temptations. And then obviously there's a sense of punishment there, punishing everyone else. Yeah. But then actually by what she's doing there is she's not punishing the people who are in it for the experiential wealth. She's punishing the other people who are there.
Yes.
Who aren't giving in to temptations. So
exactly.
It's one of those really fascinating things. If we were really approaching the situation morally. I don't know if morally is the right way to say it. But what you would be doing with each temptation in an ideal world would be seeing, so who does this actually benefit? Like, who actually needs this? So, okay, bed for the night, who's been really struggling with sleeping? Let's, as a group, decide to buy this bed for the person who's got a really bad back.
Yes.
Next one, who's been really struggling and unable to eat the rations we have? Okay, let's pay for a meal for this person too. And
which is what they do for some of it, but then people start taking the mick. Which is, interesting. It's a really interesting social experiment to just see how this team works together or does not work together for different things when people give in to temptation, as they say.
It's that interesting thing of what is temptation? Temptation is temptation just because I wouldn't argue. I would not argue that every time someone buys into one of these experiences, they are giving in to temptation. Because I think temptation is for something which isn't necessary, which and for something which genuinely probably has a negative effect on the things and the people around you. We'll talk a bit about this later. But I think there's a very interesting reflection. I think one of the things I struggled with this being called Resisting Temptation and the way or Tempting Fortune, and the way it's edited, is it's edited to sort of present that every single temptation they're offered is bad, and anyone who gives in
that's interesting
is bad. Is weak. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I think there's certain ones where, so like Vicky, who's really struggled eating the food, there was a kind of camp consensus and really struggled with the climb that she should go and take that temptation because actually it would help the rest of the group. And it's been where, so Vicky really has changed in character, where she then got a night in a bed and some like midnight snacks with it and that kind of thing. And then the next day doesn't do the hike and then eats chips and has a bottle of pop in the pub afterwards.
It's the accumulation.
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
like, it is like that idea of once one thing happens, it's much easier to do the next one and the next one and the next one. And I think it's why, coming from an evangelical background, kind of sin and going, if you do this one, it'll snowball into the next thing and very soon you'll have murdered someone because that's the natural progression. But it is part of that.
From a less extreme standpoint, if you have chosen a discipline, particularly we're in Lent, so if you've chosen a Lenten discipline, as soon as you break that discipline, even for a good reason, then the next opportunity you get to break it, it's so much easier.
Yes.
Just to put that aside.
That's a better way of describing it.
And it's not necessarily sinful. It's just you're choosing not to continue with your discipline. So particularly in this instance, there is the discipline of going on this really hard hike with self-denial, rationed eating, putting yourself through some serious extremes, and they all chose to go in with that discipline with the knowledge that there would be temptations to abandon that discipline. And I think perhaps what we're seeing is, as you said, once you've taken one break from the discipline, it's so much harder to go back to the discipline because you know what you could be doing elsewhere otherwise.
And the kind of different levels of class appearing more and more now as part of it. So there are some who are actually really quite wealthy. And so some of the kind of temptation experiences they could afford. So Hugo is really, really fascinating. At the beginning, I just thought, oh gosh, Hugo is a posh little so-and-so who is just so privileged that all of this. Yeah. But he's recognising that in his journey that he's going on. He just did an interview where he talked about, I'm realising money was never an issue for me. I could spend it on this, but actually being here was making me realise how privileged I am. And I was like, go, Hugo, you're great, man. And so he's not doing lots of things because he recognises I can do that, but there are other people here that are going to struggle to do those kind of things. So he's fascinating. I really like Hugo now.
Oh, lovely. So, let's then briefly talk about David. We've sort of already mentioned him.
Of course,
there was
David.
A really interesting moment in the second episode towards the end where they're having a big argument about Vicky has chosen to have the chips. And there's a big blow
Yes.
And everyone is shouting at each other. There doesn't seem to be any resolution. And then he says, "Stop in the name of Jesus." And everyone stops arguing and walks away. Or at least that's how it's edited. I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
Because
go on. Why did you find it so interesting?
Because yes, that is how you use Jesus's name. Like, because Jesus was because Jesus was about building peace and Jesus in that situation would have stopped them arguing. Like,
yes.
I think there would be more, though, maybe. I think I'm called to mind drawing the line in the sand when with the woman who's being stoned. I wonder whether he would be standing on the side of Vicky there.
Interesting.
The kind of let he who is without sin cast the first stone here. But in terms of stopping the chaos, though I think what Jesus would have done would then go on to then negotiate peace. But I mean, poor David in this situation. Everyone knows he's a vicar, and he's not on the show to be a vicar.
Yes, which is what he says in one of his earliest interviews, actually, that there's a different side of him and vicars are kind of held to a higher moral standard than everyone else. And finding that really frustrating and wanting to show that different side of himself. And so, which is something we've talked about on the podcast previously, about how hard it is to just want to be and just not be recognised from your collar, even if you're not wearing it. And so you've not watched it yet, but the episodes we had watched up to 2, David hadn't taken any temptations. But in the episode 3, all of them are given a secret temptation. And they were all asked beforehand, what was one thing that you'd really struggle without? And so, like, Imani has her hair care kit because she has afro hair, and so that's her temptation. Another one for Vicky, it's deodorant. For Trish, who's really struggling to sleep, it's earplugs. For Sam, who's kind of the one saying you can't take anything, it's a picture of her family. That's like her one weakness in it all. And for David, it is a packet of Haribo Sweeties. And actually, most of them don't take it. There's a few who do. So Imani takes her hair care kit, but lies to the group about what it was that she got. She said it was a nail kit, and so lies to the group about what it was and said she didn't take it, which is quite clever. Thomas, it was a donut, and he eats the donut, and initially lies to the group about eating the donut, but then is caught out later on. But David eats the sweets and admits it straight to the group, that's what he's done, that he is, he teases it and he goes, I did not eat one of those sweets. And everyone's like, good on you, David. And he's like, I ate the entire bag. And everyone just looks at him, and in the interviews afterwards, you can tell he's held to a higher moral standard, because other people are like, well, the vicar's lying, I can't trust him now, and everything like this. It's really interesting.
And, okay, so Haribo do seem to have quite a prevalence in church. I don't know, maybe it's just British culture, but Haribo really are, like, definitely if you're doing stuff with children, my messy church is we've always got Haribo involved one way or another.
Yeah.
So I can see how a fondness of Haribo could be born. Interesting that that's his one temptation, but we are all different people.
Yes. So yeah, big bag of Star Mix is the one that breaks David.
I suppose if you've been in self-denial for so long, it would be really tempting.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I want to finish by carrying on that thought about Lent and what we're doing during Lent. I came across at the start of Lent a really, really good video by a nun called Mother Angelica, an American nun who was she did TV shows kind of where she talked about things, and this is an extract from some advice she gave about Lent. It's all available on Spotify and on YouTube. Search Mother Angelica Ash Wednesday. This is what she says, and I just love it. It's completely just clicked something in me for Lent this year. She says, I never saw anyone that gave up sweets during Lent that lost a pound. Not a pound. Why? Because your motive is wrong. See, for Lent, you're supposed to give up something that's lasting. Because I know giving up candy isn't lasting. You know, at Easter, you're going to gulp down those Easter eggs. You know that. Well, I don't see the purpose of offering up candy. Why don't you offer up your temper? That's what I'm going to do for Lent. I'm going to give up my temper. I'm going to be nice to my enemies, whoever they are. And she goes on to say, but you see, actually, I don't know who my enemies are, so it's easy to be nice to them when you don't know who your enemies are, so I can't give up that. Instead, I need to, over the course of 40 days, seek to be kinder and nicer, and over those 40 days, as I seek to control my temper with the people closest to me, that will build in me a habit. Not a nun's habit, but a more godly habit. And so she talks about, and she starts calling this penance, where in the daily opportunities where you choose a better way of doing things. So you think about what your daily frustrations are. Like living in the countryside, when I talked about this on Sundays, it's when you're driving and you get caught behind a tractor or a cyclist, and you can't overtake, and people are lining up behind you, and you start to feel anxious and annoyed in yourself. And the temptation is to, like, in the silence of your car, curse them out. Say, oh, these horrible people, they're being so annoying to me. And she says, no, you've got to choose to not do that. Or if you're at a restaurant, you've got to choose to tip your waiters and waitresses. Because actually for them, every moment of their workday is a penance, because they're choosing not to tip meals in the laps of rude customers. That's a penance. She said, if I was a waiter or waitress, I'd be sticking my foot out to trip people up. And so she talks all about this, and I really liked it. Felt to me like a really fresh expression of, or a fresh insight into what Lenten penance, as she's calling it, she's Catholic, kind of actually saying that for her, penance is, she says, you come before God and you recognise your weaknesses, and it's humiliating to recognise what your weaknesses and what your temptations, what your failures are. And then in the course of Lent, over those 40 days, seeking to address and choose differently, so that you can become stronger. Because if you can become stronger at saying no to the little things, that when the big things come along, you, like Jesus in the desert, can say no. That's Mother Angelica. It's about an hour long, the full video. Amazing. And it's so worth listening to the podcast version or watching the full video, because, like I said, for me, it just clicked something about temptation. And I think for many years, I was really caught up with Lent, feeling guilty that I wasn't doing something big in self-denial for Lent. Like, I've done things like I've given up sugar for Lent before, I've given up caffeine for Lent before. And at the end of the day, although there's been slight changes to my diet longer lasting, I don't think it's necessarily changed anything in me.
No.
So, yeah, that's my recommendation for Lent. Go listen to Mother Angelica. Because can you be an elderly nun on anything?
No.
Yeah.
I may have to apologise for some sound issues that may have occurred during that, because speaking of temptation, my dog is currently wearing a cone of shame. Just showing Kate now. Someone ran and got her foot caught, we think probably in glass. And it's her back leg, so she's having to wear the cone to stop her licking it. So you are constantly tempted by licking your foot. And do you give in, Maggie? Yes, absolutely you do. Every opportunity. So don't be like Maggie the dog. Be like Mother Angelica.
Yeah, or like Millie when I had to put pants of shame on her because she'd licked herself raw. Bless her.
Yes. These foolish dogs. Sent to try us.
Anyway, unfortunately, we have to call it to a close here. I hope you've enjoyed us talking a little bit about Tempting Fortune. If you got an opportunity to watch it, do watch it and let us know what you think. We'll be watching it as it develops, I'm sure. I'll probably binge it once it's finished. Ruthie will watch it as it comes out because that's how different we are. But yeah, and maybe once his contract's up, David will revisit it with us. Maybe not. But anyway, David, we hope the rest of the show went really well for you if you are listening. Yeah. So
it's a very interesting show. Not one that I would jump to go on myself. No. I think, partly because of the pressure of being a vicar on it. I think would be hard work. But also the idea of trekking through jungle is just no.
Yeah, I just know trekking through jungle I just wouldn't be able to do. If it was being cloistered like in a cell in a nunnery, like for
you could do that.
I could do that. Just sleep.
Me neither. I could not.
If I didn't have to talk to anyone for 40 days, I could manage that.
I would give in at the first temptation to have a conversation with someone. Cool. Well, we hope you've enjoyed listening to this.
Yes.
And let us know, have you done anything for Lent? Have you decided to give something up? Have you taken something up? It'd be lovely to hear what you've been up to. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Vicars Watch Dibley. Thank you to Nat for editing our ramblings.
Any opinions expressed are our own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Church of England or any other organisation with which we are affiliated.
If you like our podcast, leave us a review, follow us on social media and share it with your friends. And, as always, bless you for listening.
Why should you never trick a jungle bird?
I don't know. Why should you never trick a jungle bird?
Because two can play at that game. Two can.
Yeah, two can. I get it.
Two can.
Yeah, two can.
Two can.
I get that.